The first detail that sent shockwaves through the industry wasn't a photo, a quote, or a leaked message. It was a time window. A narrow gap in the schedules of three people who were never supposed to overlap. Late evening, no official appointments, no assistants listed, and a location that almost never hosts private meetings. That alone was enough to make insiders uneasy. According to multiple witnesses, Sam Heughan was seen entering the venue through a side access usually reserved for staff. No entourage, no visible security, and noticeably tense in demeanor. This was not the relaxed, camera-ready presence fans were used to seeing. Those who recognized him said he avoided eye contact and moved quickly, as if time itself were the enemy. What truly escalated the situation was what followed shortly after. Within the same hour, two separate arrivals were reported, staggered just enough to avoid obvious overlap, yet close enough to raise alarms. Names began circulating quietly at first, then with growing confidence: Dakota Johnson and Caitriona Balfe. No photographs surfaced, but in this world, absence can be louder than proof. The setting added another layer of unease. This was not a studio, not a hotel known for celebrity discretion, and not a public restaurant. It was a controlled, semi-private space often used for negotiations that never appear on paper. People who worked there described an atmosphere that night as heavy, the kind where conversations stop when doors close. Speculation ignited instantly, but what made this different was the history binding these three names. Sam had long been associated with Caitriona in the public imagination, their on-screen chemistry fueling years of rumors they consistently refused to confirm or deny. Dakota, on the other hand, represented a different chapter entirely, newer, quieter, and deliberately kept away from the spotlight. The idea that these worlds might collide behind closed doors felt almost forbidden. Sources close to the situation insist this was not a coincidence. Schedules had been adjusted, meetings rescheduled, and privacy protocols quietly tightened days in advance. That level of preparation suggested intention, not chance. Whatever was discussed that night mattered enough to justify secrecy at a level rarely seen outside crisis management. What unsettled observers most was Sam's role in all of this. He wasn't just present, he was positioned at the center. Witnesses recall him being the first to arrive and the last to leave, lingering long after others had gone. When he finally exited, his expression was described as controlled but drained, the look of someone who had just navigated something emotionally expensive. The silence afterward only deepened the mystery. No public appearances, no casual social interactions, no friendly comments or shared moments that fans were used to dissecting online. It was as if a switch had been flipped, replacing familiarity with distance overnight. In the entertainment world, such sudden shifts rarely happen without cause. Online communities did what they always do: they connected dots. Old interviews were replayed, timelines reconstructed, gestures analyzed frame by frame. But this time, the usual theories felt insufficient. This wasn't about romance rumors or publicity stunts. The stakes felt heavier, more personal, and potentially irreversible. Behind the scenes, whispers suggested the meeting wasn't about choosing sides, but about setting boundaries. The kind that only become necessary when lines have already blurred. Whether emotional, professional, or both, something had reached a point where avoidance was no longer an option. And Sam, willingly or not, had become the focal point of that reckoning. As the night faded into speculation and silence, one thing became clear to those watching closely. This secret meeting wasn't meant to be known, but once it surfaced, it changed everything. The calm exterior surrounding these three names had cracked, revealing pressure beneath, and whatever was decided in that room would not stay contained for long. The days that followed revealed consequences no one could publicly explain, yet everyone could feel. Sam Heughan noticeably altered his routine, stepping back from informal appearances and declining questions that would normally earn a practiced smile. Those close to him sensed a deliberate retreat, not avoidance, as if he were protecting something fragile from further exposure. What stood out most was the silence from Dakota Johnson. There were no subtle reactions, no carefully timed public moments to redirect attention. In an industry that thrives on controlled visibility, her absence felt intentional, almost strategic, allowing speculation to burn itself out without adding fuel. Some interpreted it as confidence, others as caution, but all agreed it shifted the balance of the narrative. By contrast, Caitriona Balfe appeared briefly in public shortly after, composed but distant. Observers noted how her interactions seemed measured, polite, yet stripped of warmth. It wasn't confrontation, and it wasn't denial, but a recalibration that suggested something fundamental had been addressed behind closed doors. Industry insiders began whispering about the true purpose of the meeting. This was not about rivalry or jealousy, they said, but about clarity. Long-standing assumptions, unspoken expectations, and external narratives had grown too loud to ignore. The gathering had forced uncomfortable truths into the open, where ambiguity could no longer provide shelter. Sam's position became the most scrutinized. Caught between two powerful presences, he was no longer just an actor navigating fame, but a person negotiating emotional boundaries under a microscope. Friends described him as resolved but heavy, someone who had made a decision not everyone would understand, yet one he believed was necessary. The media, sensing a shift, softened its tone. Headlines moved away from sensational speculation and toward analysis, asking not what happened, but why it mattered. Commentators noted that the absence of denial or confirmation from all parties suggested mutual agreement on one thing. This story was not meant to be consumed as entertainment. Fans, however, continued to search for meaning. They dissected gestures, timing, and phrasing, hoping to decode what had changed. Yet the more they looked, the clearer it became that the answers were no longer on display. Whatever had been decided during that secret meeting had drawn a firm line between public perception and private reality. What lingered was the emotional aftershock. The relationships at the center of the story appeared intact, but transformed. Not broken, not reconciled, but redefined. The ease of the past had given way to something more cautious, perhaps more honest, yet undeniably heavier. As weeks passed, the intensity faded, replaced by a quiet understanding that not every mystery is meant to resolve itself. The meeting remained unacknowledged, its details unconfirmed, but its impact undeniable. Careers continued, appearances resumed, and life moved forward, though not quite as it had before. In the end, the most unsettling truth was also the simplest. Sometimes, the most important conversations happen away from cameras, away from statements, and away from explanations. And when they do, the silence that follows is not emptiness, but evidence that something real has taken place, something no headline can fully capture. In the weeks that followed, Sam Heughan seemed to settle into a new rhythm, one that felt quieter but more deliberate. Those around him noticed fewer spontaneous moments and more carefully chosen appearances. It wasn't fear that shaped this change, but awareness, the kind that comes after a line has been clearly drawn. At the same time, the continued distance from Dakota Johnson only deepened the intrigue. Her refusal to engage publicly allowed the narrative to exhaust itself, forcing audiences to confront how little they truly knew. In that silence, assumptions lost their power, replaced by unanswered questions that slowly faded from urgency to curiosity. Meanwhile, Caitriona Balfe carried on with composed professionalism, offering no signals for speculation to latch onto. The absence of drama became its own statement, suggesting closure without explanation. And for many watching closely, that restraint felt like the final confirmation that whatever happened had already been resolved, just not for public consumption.